Away Melancholy by Stevie Smith is a poem about trying to resist or push back the darkness of depression when you start to feel its grip. The speaker offers reasons to be hopeful instead of giving in to darkness, whilst acknowledging that controlling depression is not easy. Stevie Smith, and Stevie was a nickname that stuck rather than her Christian name, did not have an easy personal life. Her father ran away to sea when she was a child, and consequently she had to relocate with her mother from Yorkshire to North London when she was 3 years old. The house they took in London was to be her home for the rest of her life, apart from a few years in a sanatorium as she developed tuberculosis when she was just 5. In fact, Smith put her preoccupation with death down to this childhood illness and her consequent separation from her mother at a young age, which must have been pretty traumatic. When her mother became unwell and indeed died when Stevie Smith was just 16, her aunt moved into the family home and raised Smith and her sister. Her aunt had strong feminist values and brought her up to be very independent. She never married, and in fact, Stevie Smith died only 3 years after her aunt did. During her childhood, she was encouraged to go to church, and she knew her Bible well. Remember this for later. Interestingly, she described herself as a lapsed atheist in adulthood. She wrote a lot about God in her poetry, what God was, and whether he was real. And she seems to have come to the conclusion that even if God doesn't exist, religion can maintain social order and is therefore quite a good thing. In 1953, Smith gave up a secretarial job in a publishing company following a breakdown and decided to concentrate on her poetry and novels. She was recognised for her work in her lifetime. She was awarded the Queen's Gold Medal for Poetry in 1969, and despite continuing to live quite a secluded life with her aunt, she did have some impressive literary friends. She performed her poetry on stage with Robert Lowell, and the great Sylvia Plath wrote her a fan letter. Seamus Heaney was an admirer, as was Philip Larkin. But her poetry was considered quite quirky, macabre, and unique. Depression was something she struggled with all her life, so it's no wonder that it emerges as a key theme in her work. Her friends described her as puddle jumping from joy to grief. Perhaps her work is having a bit of a revival recently, as we're more able to talk about issues of mental health nowadays. Her most famous poem is undoubtedly the brilliant Not Waving but Drowning, and I'd advise you to have a quick look at that poem online because you'll notice her dark humour and obsession with mortality, and this may be useful for your understanding of the poem that we're going to look at too. I'll read the poem, but you can skip over this bit if you've read it recently. Away, melancholy, away with it, let it go. Are not the trees green, the earth as green? Does not the wind blow, fire leap, and the rivers flow? Away, melancholy. The ant is busy, he carrieth his meat. All things hurry to be eaten or eat. Away, melancholy. Man too hurries, eats, couples, berries. He is an animal also, with a hey-ho, melancholy. Away with it, let it go. Man of all creatures is superlative. Away, melancholy. He of all creatures alone raiseth a stone. Away, melancholy. Into the stone the god pours what he knows of good, calling good God. Away, melancholy. Let it go. Speak not to me of tears, tyranny, pots, wars, saying, can God, stone of man's thoughts, be good? Say rather, it is enough that the stuffed stone of man's good growing by man's called God. Away, melancholy, let it go. Man aspires to good, to love, sighs, beaten, corrupted, dying, in his own blood lying, yet heaves up an eye above, cries, love, love. It is his virtue needs explaining, not his failing. Away, melancholy, away with it, let it go. By glancing at the form of the poem, even at the title and the first lines, you'll notice a considerable amount of repetition, and this creates the effect of making the poem feel like a chant. We chant when we want to steady ourselves or train our minds, and that adds a psychological element to the poem. I'll mention the chorus or refrain again a bit later in the video, but you may wish to be aware of the musical element to the poem, the repetition, assonance and alliteration, and also that Stevie Smith sometimes sang out her poems at poetry readings. The title is repeated in the first line of the poem, and the anaphora is extended to the second line too, with the repetition of the adverb away. We are missing the imperative go, as in go away, which makes the poem seem slightly old-fashioned in tone, perhaps even biblical in its language choices. We imagine the speaker trying to shoo away or repress a melancholic nature or a bout of depression. The word melancholy means sadness or depression, but it also has an old-fashioned edge to it, as melancholy was one of the four humours. You may well have come across the idea of the four humours while studying Shakespeare or Chaucer, but Hippocrates is credited with establishing the idea. It was thought until fairly recently that people had a certain type of disposition. It could be a melancholic one, with a tendency to be unhappy or anxious, a phlegmatic or calm or even lazy personality, a choleric or angry personality, or a sanguine personality, being optimistic and hopeful. Ask yourself at this point who the speaker is addressing. Is melancholy personified? Is the speaker addressing a listener? Is she talking to herself about her own melancholy disposition? Any of these options are plausible. I think she's addressing herself, her own tumultuous mind. The monosyllabic diction choice in Let It Go, with its harsh consonants combined with the use of anaphora, suggests that the poetic voice is making an assertive effort to push depression away. This self-talk or mantra perhaps indicates that it's hard to control the sort of invasive, enduring sadness, and that it requires real determination to overcome it. It's not easy. Look also at the amount of caesura and end stop lines in this initial stanza, which cuts the stanza into tiny fragments. This highly concentrated level of punctuation adds to the clipped or curt tone of the poem and reinforces the sense of gritted teeth determination. In the second stanza, a quatrain this time, the speaker muses upon reasons to be cheerful and positive. Look at the repetition or diacope of green to emphasize the beauty and lushness of nature and its enduring power. Note the use of rhetorical questions to show internal conflict, as the speaker reminds herself of the power and majesty of nature, which is uplifting. As surely the only answer to the questions is the affirmative. We also have a quick succession of active verbs here: blow, leap, flow. By referring to all the elements, earth, wind, fire, water, in the stanza, it is as if the speaker is reminding herself or himself that they are a small part of a great big universe, and that they should try and look outwards again to the wider world and thereby get things into proportion or back into perspective. In the third stanza, we have a change of focus from the very big elemental forces of the world to a small creature, the ant. An insect isn't analytical or philosophical or conscious of its plight, but it is a living creature, just like us, who busies itself trying to survive. In this way, we're all part of the circle of life. All things hurry to be eaten or eat. We just want to provide for ourselves and survive. The asyndetic list of hurries, eats, couples, berries, and the enjambment, which increases the pace of the stanza, reinforces the idea that life happens apace and is quickly over. And it also reminds us that life is actually pretty basic and simple. We just want to live and breed, pass our genetic blueprint on, because ultimately we will all die like every other creature on this planet. An understanding of this might be considered a bit depressing, but as it's an inevitable truth and as it's the same for everyone, in a way it could help us get our little insignificant worries back into proportion. The hey-ho, with its breathy alliteration which evokes a sigh, and also contains a sing-song element, adds to the folk song sound of the poem or its simple musicality. It's a funny, dismissive utterance and reinforces the idea that life should be simple and not something to fret over. Note that the old-fashioned or biblical language in this stanza, "He carrieth his meat," for example, works to suggest that we're all God's creatures. This also creates a sense of fate or predestination and the idea that it's difficult to control our destiny, so there's not much point fretting over it. In the fifth stanza, man is established as being superlative, or the best living creature. Man is superior as we are created in God's image, according to the Bible. We're also more conscious or cognitively developed than other animals. Look at the line, "raiseth a stone," note the archaic language again, which could refer to the stone at the mouth of the tomb that was rolled away 3 days after Christ's crucifixion, indicating Jesus' resurrection. The implication is that we too, like Jesus, can resurrect ourselves or rise again and reinvent ourselves. Alternatively, the stone could refer to the stone tablets created after Moses and his people met with God at Mount Sinai, on which the 10 Commandments were inscribed. You can find this passage in the book of Exodus in the Bible. The 10 Commandments outline a moral code or rules to live by, and therefore the stone image in the poem becomes a metaphor for religion and morality, as well as the strength of the human spirit. The next thing to notice is the repeated references to God and good, and the deliberate proximity of these two diction choices. And of course, these words become synonymous. English is a Germanic language, and in all the Germanic languages, the words God and good are homomorphic. They sound almost identical. Remember the hymns that you might have sung in primary school: God is love, He's the care, tending each everywhere, and later God is good. This poem dragged them up from the back of my memory. If God is real, then He sacrificed His own Son to save us, according to Scripture. On the other hand, if we constructed the idea of religion, we created God to encourage humanity to be good, made to control behaviour in society. This concept of goodness and religion and our awareness of our own choices and behaviour does make us different to other animals. And as I mentioned earlier, perhaps the image of the stone has connotations of human strength or stoicism too, which the speaker is calling upon when he or she tries to dismiss melancholy. Think of how we call someone our rock if they're strong and steady and we can rely on them. Notice that the anaphora of Away Melancholy creeps into this stanza within parenthesis on 2 occasions. This makes it seem less emphatic, but it is still there, reminding us how hard it is to overcome a depression, even when you're trying to distract yourself with positive things like the strength of the human spirit or the solace of religion. We return to the refrain again after this focus on the relationship between man and God. In the next stanza, "Speak not to me of tears," the speaker warns us not to blame God for man's ills. We have a list of nasty things that can afflict us. Notice the terse alliterative sounds here and the plosive sounds, t and p, and also the use of the imperative verb in "speak not," which is forceful and emphatic. It asserts the idea that God does not cause sorrow, war, political strife, or disease. It's just too simplistic to blame man's problems on a higher power. The suggestion is that man has responsibility for his own behaviour and choices. Man has the ability to change and grow in his decision-making and find the goodness in life. The very fact that man can face horrible adversity and be resilient, or even simply employ hope, is admirable and makes life worth living. The idea of God as the stone of our thoughts continues the extended metaphor of the resurrection and the idea of reinvention and resilience, but it also implies that religion is a constant and the bedrock or foundation of our behaviour. Religion is supposed to give us a moral code. It's supposed to teach us goodness. It's our fault if we twist that for malicious means. Next, we have a tiny stanza consisting of only a few syllables. It promotes and outlines man's simple aspiration to hope and try and be better. Often we want the best for ourselves and the people that we love. We commit to others and love with dedication and devotion, and the sigh perhaps indicates the effort and emotion that this can take. There is some end-stop punctuation with a semicolon, and the ideas before and after that semicolon link man and his hope to be a better person with Christ and his suffering for us on the cross. Beaten, corrupted, dying. This cluster of three implies that our endurance of sadness and suffering is Christ-like and admirable. The amazing thing about man is that he too can be like Jesus and keep an eye on the heavens, or look up to God and employ hope, goodness, love. The use of the epizeuxis here, love, love, indicates both a sense of urgency and determination, and refers to the desire for emotional strength even when tormented or desperate. This penultimate stanza contains a series of neat rhyming couplets, dying, lying, above, love, explaining, failing, as if the poetic voice is tying things up and has reached a conclusion about man. It is his virtue that we should wonder about, not his failing, i.e., it's man's capacity to cope in the face of adversity that is amazing and makes him human. And therefore we should focus on this ability to keep trying to resurrect ourselves and not on man's failings. The poem is circular in structure. We end the poem as we started, with the refrain, "Away Melancholy, away with it, let it go." But there has been a 10-line gap without an appearance of the refrain, so it seems calmer, less frantic now. There are so many positives about the world and man's condition that the speaker does not need to feel sorrow, but instead has come to a more rational understanding of the human condition, which could help them repress their natural disposition or depressive tendencies. Life is full of challenges and suffering, and ultimately we must face our own mortality. But man has an extraordinary capacity for hope and faith and love, which makes life wonderful. And as I say this phrase, it reminds me of the famous biblical passage, 1 Corinthians 13, which incidentally is very popular at weddings, you may have heard it. And now these three remain, faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. And I think it's the big idea in the poem. Try and keep despair and depression at bay, because life contains wonderful, powerful emotions too. So in summary, the big ideas in this poem are that we live in a wonderful world, and therefore we can find solace and meaning in nature. Humankind has some incredible character traits, such as the capacity to employ hope and resilience and faith in the face of adversity, and of course the ability to love. So the conclusion that the speaker comes to, and the message that the reader is given, is to press on with life and look for the good, and thereby release ourselves from the grip of depression. I hope you found this video useful. Please take a moment to hit the thumbs up. Thank you very much for listening.